Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm getting started a little later than usual, but it's because I had a little more research than I thought. It's 420. Happy Taco Tuesday. Anyway, 420 being the day, and in Colorado, a very big deal. I thought first I would start with where the 420 came from. Who decided that that was a pot holiday and that type of thing. And then I will go into the prohibition of marijuana and where that started and how that kind of got incorporated into the war on drugs and all these other things. So I'll kind of break that down for people. First off, it's kind of a funny story because we think of, like 420, like it's got to have some type of like big magical something if it's, the holiday for pot. But it's not really. It's so funny because really what happened is you had a group of teenagers at, I think it was San Rafael High School in California. And there was 5 or 6 of them, and they would meet every day at 420 because it was like the perfect time, right? They were out of school and the parents weren't home from work yet, so they could smoke and do that kind of thing. And so that kind of became a code word for them, is the 420, right? And so it caught on and people started using it. Well, then what happened is, let's see, the parents, right, of these kids, they were actually, Mark Gavich, which was one of the parents of this group of kids, which, by the way, they called Waldos, which I think is great. If anybody knows about the Finding Waldo, I think that's probably where that came from as well. So, anyway, this dad, he happened to own real estate, and in that process, big time real estate in California, one of the bands that he was familiar with and kind of became friends with was the Grateful Dead. And so, and I guess they were kind of all, like their brother of the Grateful Dead, he was also involved in this, and they were all kind of a group of friends, right? And so, and because they did a lot of their practices and things like that, these kids were around. And so they kind of caught on to the 420. And anyway, from the Huffington Post, they say the Grateful Dead practiced at a rehearsal hall in San Rafael, California. So we used to go and hang out and listen to them, play music and get high while they're practicing their gigs. And that's then how the 420 just spread massively. And that's what we have today. So, ta-da, kind of silly, but cute. All right. So now on to the serious stuff, right? Because when you think about pot, and especially the older generations, there really was a lot of propaganda that was put out there about it being a gateway drug, about it being something that would lead you to basically hell. You were going to commit horrible crimes, and you were going to just be no use to society if you smoke weed. Okay, that was this big propaganda. And it's kind of it's a complicated history because there's a lot of people that are involved in it, and it kind of goes in all these different directions. I guess we'll kind of take a step back to when the prohibition was put into place for marijuana, and basically the companies and the governmental people that were involved. Okay. So it looks like, from everything that I could find, basically when it's like after President Ford is when it really started a push, okay? Because when you look at history, you'll see that President Ford was using hemp for all kinds of stuff. In fact, he did an article that was written by Henry Ford, blah, 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 the New $1 Billion Corp, okay? And basically, he was using hemp for construction, to make cars, to do a lot of different things that were proving to be more economic and I guess easier to produce than the fossil fuels and the gas that was, available at that time. Okay. So then you've got, here were the things. So at that time, they were using it wasn't just about people smoking weed. It was the hemp plant itself was being used for all types of things. And, rope, papers, all kinds of anything in construction. They basically were very dependent on hemp. In fact, our Constitution is written on hemp paper. It was a crop that's easy to grow. It manufactures as a weed, so you can do so much with it, and it enriches the soil and blah 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 blah. Okay, very medicinal, right? There was a lot of that too. But then, going in the second half of like the 1930s, the use of hemp within the business and production, it was becoming a big deal. Right? Like it was kind of taking over the industry because you could use it for so much. But there were families that were producing it, but not enough. So they actually came in, and I think, let me find it here. They made it a law that any farm in the United States actually had to grow a certain amount of hemp. Okay? And I thought that was fascinating because, then we went from another extreme. Anyway, so hemp being a big deal, keeps going. Well, then, I guess what was happening is because they were able to extract it, the fuel so much easier from hemp, that when that got out, the oil industry, even that far back, was huge and making a lot of money, and it was, the main source of everything. So, of course, they don't want that happening, right? That is not good. And so, let's see. I'm going to try and go back here. Okay, so it says here that basically at the end of the 1930s, DuPont came in, right? And they were very... They all the materials that they used were coming from the fossil fuels. So they started patenting, and they started pushing and producing, more that had to do with the fossil fuels, trying to kind of advertise and trying to move it and providing more jobs, that type of thing. But then I guess so. The politics of the time also provided no favor, right? So what was happening is that even though these industries and the people, once Ford was out of office, politics was very involved in these large corporations, even all the way back in the 1930s. So it was, let's see here. It was the Treasury. Okay, so it was the Treasury Secretary of the time, Andrew Mellon, which, remember that name because that'll come up again, right? Andrew Mellon himself, he was known for being involved in the industry, in the industrialization of our time. And so, of course, he's going to back the idea of business, of corporate, of the fossil fuel idea, because that's what's bringing everything in, right? So what he did is once he took on that position, with his weight firmly on the side of big business, such as General Motors and DuPont, both of those, again, being based in those fossil fuels, he wasted no time in crafting a solution to the hemp problem through the proxy of the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act. Okay, so this puts everything into a totally different perspective and starts attaching not just marijuana but also hemp. Right, so both are considered the same. There's no separation, and it's something that starts being, through propaganda and through the media and all these things, really criminalized, basically. So, let's see here. The campaign escalated through biased media and propaganda, and then the movie Reefer Madness came out, right? And that was released in 1936. Perfect. Fit the agenda just the way they wanted, because that movie really scared people. They really believed that if you smoked weed, you were gonna, like, you couldn't help yourself from committing horrible acts or crimes or, whatever. So, okay, so another thing that Malin did, right, is he comes in and he decides he heads up the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, right? But then what he does is he brings in his niece's husband, okay, Henry Aslinger, and, sorry, I said Aslinger, it's Angsler. Oh, sorry, that was a Freudian. Okay, who in turn wasted no time in drafting and getting the 1936 Tax Act through the official channels. They did it without a roll call, right? They did it basically an unseen and no debating, right? They wanted this in secret because they knew that it's not really constitutional. It was all about the money. And this was the intent of the anti-hemp and anti-cannabis movement at the time, and every effort was made to prepare the bill in secret, and several severely limited the knowledge of or opportunity of the other side to challenge it, right? They just didn't even want to deal with that. They were like, okay, well, we're just going to push this and it's going to be done. Okay. Well, that, it's still happening. Right? If we take a look at what's going on today, we've still got a lot of things that the media, the propaganda, they just take a hold of it and they decide basically what people are going to believe. And maybe not everyone, but a majority will fall in line to what the media is telling them, right? So, let's see here. Okay. And the thing about this act, again, and I know that I mentioned this, but it placed cannabis and marijuana together, right? There was no, it was all restricted, right? So this act placed all cannabis products under the purview and restrictions of the Treasury Department. This was precisely what the likes of DuPont wanted at the time to completely eliminate the competition of hemp, right? That way they didn't have to worry about there actually being something that could be produced that wasn't killing everyone and could be more easily extracted, could be grown more massively without, again, destroying the planet, because it actually is one of the only plants that puts nutrients back into the soil, right? Let's see here. Which also fell under completely eliminates the competition because all of it fell under the act as a cannabis-related product despite as many essentials that were using it, right? And the High Times came out, lifestyle misinformation, which was promoted during that period to display the evil nature, all right, of marijuana to the general society. So, like, people were really getting slammed with, boy, this is a bad idea. This is really gross, and don't use it, don't do it. And because at that time, it was brought in by, from Mexico, and a lot of people who had other cultures or maybe religious beliefs were using marijuana in ritualistic things, for maybe to relax, whatever. But that was really just looked down upon, even though, they'd go home and suck down some cigarettes and martinis and knock themselves out, beat their children, whatever. Anyway, so let's see. Okay, so that's where it really all started. Is you've got the 1937 Tax Act that just said, what? It's illegal now. You can no longer produce any type of hemp, and if that's what you've been doing, no, guess what? Done. Illegal all over. Can't have it, can't use it, won't import it. So like anything that was being made from those products from other countries, stop. So, of course, it just fell out, right? Because America was such a large part of the economy at that time. Well, it still is. So it really just, it pushed everything, okay? Let's see. Yeah, so basically that was what killed it, and that's what really started it. And so now what's happening, okay, they really had control again. And it's things I've been talking about. You've got people, you've got a collective that is in control of everything. The media, the government, the food, the water. And this isn't a conspiracy. I mean, people can look this up themselves. If they take the time, they'll see it's black and white. It's laid out. There's no hidden agenda. They're telling everyone. It's just people don't know about it. So it seems like it's just too much, right? So I guess I'm going to read the final thoughts of this one author because I guess, when you look at what's happening now in Colorado and how it has become legal, but we're still dealing with the federal government and we're dealing with huge taxes. I mean, it's amazing the profit that is being made, and not by the individuals who are, selling the hemp. Of course, there's a lot of that, but it's really the governments because they're taking such a high percentage, and then the federal government is also getting their kick, right? Which, so if it's illegal, and you're taking money from the people who are distributing, aren't you also in distribution? That sounds like a mafia law that we're kind of getting into here, right? So the government is at risk of not following its own rules. Imagine that. So, okay, the final thoughts for this author. And I was looking here to try and find... it just gives me all this fact checker information, which I'm like, I appreciate, but it's like, wow, let's, all right, I want to give some credit to this guy. So it looks like the contributor was Stephen Bloom, publisher. Okay, final thoughts, here we go. As with any conspiracy-related theory, it is an unending challenge to prove beyond any doubt. However, all we can do is analyze the events which occurred, who was involved, and their timing. This would certainly paint a picture of correlation and collusion between the powerful industrialists of the time period in the cotton and other industries, right? So that's, it really, again, was all about the money, which is... it hasn't changed, right? Here we are in 2021, and we still got the same people in power. We've still got the same people in Congress. Pelosi's and Biden, 40 years, they've made a career out of being elected into these positions, become millionaires off the backs of the people that they're supposed to be representing, but instead enslaving. What are we doing? Okay. Regardless of how their movements are designed, the end result was the downfall of a very strong rival industry which had been in existence for centuries before. So this had been people were using hemp, they were smoking it, they were using it for everything before this, and a lot of it medicinal. Didn't want that because they also, brought in the pharmaceutical companies, and that's a big deal. So all synthetic. So what they did is they took anything that was using marijuana, THC, or cannabis, they took that out and created a synthetic marijuana, THC. Same idea, same thing, but it was synthetic, and they could charge you for it as a pharmaceutical. Imagine that. And they could control it then, right? They could be the ones that disperse it. They could put different things in it to cause different effects, all that good stuff. And then, let's see here. So, it basically, what he's saying is he's just pointing the finger at the cotton industry the most, which we use a lot. And I appreciate cotton, but I don't think that it should have taken over and created an industry that, again, was destructive to our planet and is continuing to mess us up. Let's see. Okay. So, in the middle of all of this, and as it continues and it rolls on, right, and you get into the 50s and then you hit the 60s, and the hippies come in and free love and smoking weed and all this stuff, and let's see, and you've got President Nixon, right, and turning up the propaganda machine because he was invested heavily in the cotton industry. And so, basically war on drugs. In 1961, the U.S. had signed on to the International Single Convention Treaty, which divulged illegal and legal drugs into 4 different categories, right? So this is where then they could take hemp and make it a scheduled drug, right? And once it's scheduled, it completely illegal. Like there are some drugs, methamphetamine. That's it's a Schedule 2, I think. I'm trying to find the piece of paper just to confirm. Yeah, so by scheduling it that way, not only, again, people were then all of a sudden being imprisoned for long periods of time because it was like a drug that would kill you. Seriously, like how did this even happen? And why did people let this happen? Like, where did this even come from? And then, as time then moves on and the propaganda continued, you've got a whole generation or maybe 2 generations that are believe that if you smoke pot, you're basically going to hell. That's it. You're done for because you're going to do things that are bad. You're bad. All right, so... But then you've got these kids that come in and they're like, no, we're gonna smoke this. We're gonna do our thing, blah, blah, blah. Runs on through the 70s, right? And then the 80s hit and you've got pot and you've got Boone's Farm and you've got, all these really fun things. I happen to have a little bit of personal experience, from that era. And basically... It was still kind of in the 80s. You had Ronald Reagan as the president. Are you kidding me? He was such a pawn and a puppet. It was so obvious, but people just sucked him up. That monkey thing, I can't remember the name of that show that he did, but good Lord. Anyway, it was like he really put the push in on the war on drugs, right? And that was, again, and I already talked about this the other day, that was not just to keep the enslavement going, with the cotton industry and those that are producing in the South, but brought in the private prisons, which are also, first of all, making a profit, but then backing those industries, right? You've got the prisoners working those fields for free. They're slaves. This didn't change. Okay, especially in the South. And I just watched a video today where it hasn't changed. It's very bad. And there's a lot of racism, especially in the South, more so than there should be anywhere. This is 2021. People seriously need to pull their head out and stop looking at the color, stop looking at all these different things, and let's fix our society, right? Let's educate. Let's pull people in instead of being like, well, they did it to themselves. No, that's not true. It's the circumstances that they've been shoved into generation and generation and generation. We can change it, right? All right, let's see here. So basically, okay, so then you move into, like the year 2, so in Colorado, you could actually, I think it was in the 90s that you could get a medical license for marijuana and then you could grow it. They didn't have dispensaries and that type of thing. Basically you had to know somebody with this license and then you had to get a license and then you guys could affiliate together and go back and forth, anyway. Then when everything, California, of course, was the forefront in this. Everybody says it was Colorado, which, Colorado was the first to make everything legal, like, the recreational and medicinal, start opening up these dispensaries and start really getting it going. But California did it a long time before with the medical, right? They were making so much money because at that time, California was losing their ass. Like, they were seriously struggling a lot. And they had, these influx of people, but not a lot of income coming in because of all the refugees and all kinds of shit was happening. Well, they started selling that pot. Ba-boom, ba-boom. Millions, billions of dollars started flowing in. And nobody was really recognizing it or even understood it, but it was happening. Okay. Let's see here. I keep having to kind of go through and look. I probably should have my glasses on. That'd probably be better. But, dun, dun, dun. let's see, I'm trying to find, because there was a proposal 19 that basically it regulated and the Control and Tax Cannabis Act of 2010, right? Which is, it basically was on the California ballot, and that's how all this stuff kind of got moving. It had a chance to tax and regulate, right? So as soon as they got that passed, it was game on, right? Because the government, even though they were still saying, oh, no, they were taking the money. So that's a big yes, yes, yes. Again, mafia laws and rules and all this stuff, you know. Let's see. I mean, and the biggest thing is and has been, is kind of contradicting and showing people the difference now, that it is medicinal, that it's not going to do the harm, and that it's just as, if people are having 2 or 3 drinks every night, and then you've got another person who is smoking a joint every night, that is, to me, I mean, it's the same, and it should be nobody's business. You know, if you've got people that are going to elementary schools and, you know, trying to get kids to sell drugs or pot to other little kids so that they can make a profit, you know, that type of stuff, yeah, that you should get in trouble for that. It's wrong. But otherwise, we need to be looking at how it is, again, our government runs the people, right? Instead of the people running the government. We've become these sheep that are just like these scared little beings, you know, oh God, you know, we're gonna get in trouble. We got to pay our taxes. We got to do this. We got to do that. When in reality, again, $3.7 trillion they collected in tax revenue. I don't know about you all, but my roads aren't done. My education system in my area is not good. There are a lot of things that suck about the community we live in, and there's no public service. So why are we continuing to pay a public service tax? We all need to take a look at what is going on. I hope you enjoy 420, and I hope you have a great day. Bye, all.